world is no longer standing on solid ground. Tonight, what you're about to hear is not speculation, it's not a distant warning, it's a reality unfolding right now before our very eyes. For years, we watched the silent battle play out in the shadows. Sanctions, threats, secret assassinations, proxy wars. But tonight, all of that changes. Iran has drawn a line the world hoped would never come. A direct war with America is no longer a distant nightmare. It's becoming This isn't just about politics. This isn't about borders. This is about the raw collision of pride, survival, and power. As the clock ticks and tensions escalate, we are witnessing a moment that may rewrite the future of global history. Do not look away. Do not blink, because what's coming next may leave the world forever changed. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand why millions are holding their breath and why the next move may ignite a fire no one can extinguish. For years, Iran has walked a tightrope, balancing between survival and sovereignty. Its patience was not weakness, it was strategy. As the world hurled sanctions, political isolation, and economic warfare upon it, Iran played the long game. Every act of aggression, every diplomatic betrayal, every covert operation against its interests was met not with immediate retaliation, but with a calculating restraint. The world mistook this restraint for submission. They thought Iran was too afraid to respond, too isolated to fight back. But behind closed doors, patience was fermenting into resolve. What the world saw as silence was actually a nation preparing, fortifying, and sharpening its will. Decade after decade, Iran watched as its scientists were assassinated, its generals targeted, its economy strangled. Yet, it held back, knowing that timing is everything when you stand against giants. This patience wasn't born out of fear. It was a fierce determination to choose the moment, not to be provoked into a war that favored its enemies' plans. Iran knew that one wrong move could bring devastation, not just to its borders, but to its people, its culture, and its future. But every nation has its limits. There comes a moment when patience transforms into defiance, when survival demands action. Today, that moment has arrived. The latest attacks, the continued provocations, and now the increasing involvement of America have broken that line. This is not the Iran of 20 years ago. It's not the fractured, weakened state many predicted would collapse under pressure. It has become a hardened force, experienced in proxy conflicts, fortified by regional alliances, and emboldened by a sense of historic destiny. His leadership now sends a clear message to the world. Our patience has reached its limit. This isn't a mere warning, it's a declaration. Years of absorbing the pressure have forged a resolve that is no longer content with defensive posturing. It is now willing to confront directly, regardless of the consequences. The world has underestimated how deeply Iran's pride, its history, and its ideology fuel this decision. What was once caution has turned into an unstoppable momentum. The patience has expired. The balance has shifted. The world, and especially America, must now face an Iran that is no longer waiting. The countdown has begun. The moment a nation sets a deadline in the language of war, the entire landscape changes. It is no longer diplomacy. It is no longer negotiation. It is a line in the sand drawn with fire. Iran's declaration of a deadline to the United States is not just a warning. It is a timer ticking loudly in the ears of the world. A message that time is no longer on anyone's side. For decades, Iran was reactive. It waited. It responded only when pushed. But now it is initiating the next move, and not just any move, a declaration that unless America changes course, the next phase will not be words, but fire and steel. This is not theater. This is preparation. And what makes it even more dangerous is that it's not being said behind closed doors and secret intelligence briefings. It's being broadcast to the world stage. A deadline, especially in geopolitics, is not a casual gesture. It means every hour that passes is a step closer to irreversibility. It means Iran is no longer trying to prevent conflict, it is organizing for it. It is a shift from defense to offense, from reaction to initiation. And when a country like Iran, with decades of pent-up rage, national pride, and strategic patience, finally flips that switch, it's not just another Middle East skirmish. It becomes a flashpoint the whole world fears. This deadline isn't a bluff. It comes after months of pressure, proxy wars, nuclear sabotage, assassinations, and now direct American strikes. And when a sovereign state tells a superpower that the next move will be decisive, it means the cost of ignoring it is no longer political, it's existential. The phrase, direct war now inevitable, isn't media hype. It is the consequence of time running out. The diplomatic channels are dry. The red lines have been crossed. Iran is saying loud and clear, there is no more waiting. A moment is coming where missiles replace statements, where battlegrounds replace boardrooms. The world doesn't yet realize the weight of this deadline, but Iran does. And perhaps, most dangerously, they no longer care whether the world is ready or not. The decision, in their eyes, has already been made. What comes next isn't debate, it's detonation. The looming confrontation between Iran and America is far more than a dispute between two nations. It represents a seismic shift in the global power structure that has long been dominated by a select few. For decades, America sat at the apex of that structure, dictating terms, enforcing sanctions, and leveraging its military might to maintain global supremacy. But beneath that dominance, new currents have been quietly building. Iran's emergence as a defiant power, refusing to bow despite relentless pressure, signals that these currents are no longer hidden. They are rising to the surface. What makes this moment so explosive is not just Iran's growing military capabilities or its regional alliances, but the symbolic message its resistance carries for a world already disillusioned with a unipole order. Across continents, nations have watched as America's global reach was challenged again and again by rising economies, shifting alliances, and regional powers willing to push back against the old rules. Iran's confrontation with America is not happening in isolation. It sits at the crossroads of larger forces. Russia's defiance, China's rise, shifting alliances across Asia, Africa, and even parts of Europe. Each act of resistance chips away at the foundation of a world order built after World War II. Iran's bold stance now resonates far beyond its borders. It is sending a signal to every nation that has tasted American sanctions, military threats, or political interference. The era of unquestioned dominance may be approaching its end. And that is what makes this situation uniquely dangerous. It's not just about Iran's nuclear sites or America's military bases. It's about who controls the future balance of global power. When one power begins to slip and another refuses to kneel, the result is almost always conflict. History has shown that global shifts rarely occur peacefully. As Iran moves closer to direct war with America, the stakes are no longer limited to Tehran or Washington. The entire world stands at the edge of a possible reordering of power, one that could redraw alliances, shift economies, and ignite new theaters of confrontation far beyond the Middle East. This is why every diplomat watches with bated breath, because behind the missiles, the threats, and the war games lies a much deeper battle. A battle for who writes the rules of the next century. And Iran is making it clear it refuses to be written out of that story. The threat of direct war between Iran and America carries consequences that reach far beyond the battlefield. In a world already fragile from economic instability, inflation, and geopolitical uncertainty, such a conflict has the potential to trigger a global financial catastrophe. The Middle East sits on the heart of the world's energy arteries. Its oil fields, shipping lanes, and critical infrastructure supply much of the fuel that powers the global economy. A war between Iran and America would not be confined to missile strikes and military bases. It would choke critical supply routes like the Strait of Hormuz, through which nearly 1/5 of the world's oil flows every single day. Even the hint of instability in this region sends oil prices surging, financial markets trembling, and economies scrambling to prepare for shock waves that can cripple industries, governments, and entire population. The ripple effects would not stop at rising fuel prices. Supply chains that are already strained from years of pandemic disruptions and trade tensions would face unprecedented pressure. The cost of transporting goods, producing essential materials, and maintaining stable markets would skyrocket. Inflation, which is already haunting global economies, would explode further as basic necessities become harder to access and more expensive to produce. Developing nations that rely heavily on stable energy prices would feel the sting first, but no corner of the world would be immune. From Wall Street to Europe's financial centers, from Asia's factories to Africa's commodity markets, the tremors of a direct war would reach everywhere, unsettling every investor, business, and household. Central banks, already struggling to control inflation and stabilize their currencies, would face a brutal dilemma. Raise interest rates to curb inflation and risk economic contraction, or loosen policies and risk runaway price increases. Either path carries devastating consequences for ordinary people. Jobs would be lost, savings eroded, and governments would come under immense pressure to control spiraling public unrest. This is not just an economic theory. It is a reality that the world has seen in smaller conflicts before. But a direct war between Iran and America has the potential to unleash a storm far greater in scale and speed than anything seen in recent decades. Behind every missile launch, every military strike, lies a chain reaction that could bring global markets to their knees. And as the world watches these tensions rise, many are realizing that this is not just a conflict between two nations, it is a knife hovering over the entire global economy, ready to strike at any moment. For years, the struggle between Iran and America unfolded largely in the shadows, waged through proxies and covert operations. Iran's influence extended through groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various militias in Iraq and Syria. Each move was carefully calculated, allowing Tehran to challenge American interest without engaging in direct confrontation. It was a deadly chess match where neither side openly crossed the ultimate red line of direct war, yet both inflicted damage and tested limits. America, too, operated from the shadows, using sanctions, intelligence operations, and targeted strikes to weaken Iran's reach while avoiding a full-scale war that could destabilize the entire region. This proxy war became the silent battlefield of the modern Middle East, stretching across borders and involving countless innocent lives caught in the crossfire. But now, that carefully maintained balance is collapsing. The latest escalation has exposed the limits of proxy conflict. The recent targeted strikes, assassinations of high-ranking figures, and open threats from both sides signal a shift that is unmistakable. Iran's leadership is no longer satisfied with indirect responses. The time for subtlety has passed. The stakes have grown too large and the provocations too bold. By declaring a deadline and warning of direct confrontation, Iran is effectively stating that the era of shadow wars is over. The gloves are coming off. This is not merely a shift in tactics, it is a shift in philosophy. When a nation moves from indirect conflict to direct war, it signals a willingness to face devastating consequences for the sake of principle, sovereignty, and survival. It reflects a calculated decision that the cost of continued humiliation, provocation, and sanctions has become greater than the cost of war itself. The transition from proxy war to direct confrontation is one of the most dangerous thresholds any conflict can cross. It removes the buffers that once prevented full-scale escalation. There are no longer intermediaries to absorb the blows, no longer small groups fighting on behalf of larger powers. It becomes state against state, army against army, with the full weight of national pride, military capability, and global alliances standing behind them. This is where miscalculations become catastrophic. A single strike can trigger an uncontrollable chain of retaliations, drawing in allies, igniting regional warfare, and risking a global crisis. Iran's move toward direct confrontation with America is not simply an act of defiance. It is a point of no return that holds the world on edge, staring into the abyss of what could become one of the most dangerous conflicts of the modern era. The world is now holding its breath, caught in the unbearable tension of what might unfold next. Every capital, every military strategist, every intelligence agency is watching with a mix of anxiety and disbelief as Iran and America stand on the edge of direct war. The question looming over every conversation, every emergency meeting is simple yet terrifying. Will America blink? For decades, America has carried the image of untouchable dominance, using its unmatched military power, its economic strength, and its global alliances to force adversaries into submission. It has drawn countless red lines, expecting that no nation would dare to cross them. But today, those lines are no longer